Coming up on the Making Waves VO podcast.
Because whenever somebody does something nefarious, we all suffer, especially I'm not a demo producer, but certainly in this case, other demo producers suffered by association. Other coaches, myself included, suffered by association because it reduces the faith in the people in our business, and that's harmful.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves. Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
This is the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell.
Welcome to the Making Waves VO podcast. I'm Sammy Solo today. It's Kevin Kilpatrick here. Bobby Maxwell is a bit under the weather, but Bobby has submitted some questions for this very exciting Making Waves VO podcast presented by Full Compass, fullcompass.com. We know VO. And we're not going to wait anymore. We've got a very exciting guest. He is an extremely talented voice actor. He is a good guy in the business, too. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Paul Schmidt. Paul, welcome.
Well, Kevin, I don't know where you're getting your information, but it's really suspect.
Oh, really suspect. How are you, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, man. This is a blast. I've been listening to your podcast for probably... I think it had another name years and years ago, did it not?
This is our second incarnation. It was previously known as the Middle Class VO podcast. And that was, we talked about, the reasoning behind that. We're nuts and bolts voice actors, our meat and potatoes voice actors. We do a lot of the grunt work, the grinding stuff, the stuff that gets the bills paid. And then, it was like about a year or so ago, I said, Bobby, you're just making too much money. We have got to move on up, like the Jeffersons. So, yeah, that's what Paul is referring to. So, Paul, let's talk about your history and your path to voiceover because I think we have a lot of commonalities. You did theater, you did radio, right?
I did.
Tell us
both.
all about your path to voiceover.
So if you want to go back to theater, from the time I was 6 until the time I was a freshman in college, that was my thing, man. That was my purpose. That was what I wanted to do with my life. I grew up in Baltimore, and the only, I guess, sad part about that was when I was a kid, there wasn't much straight, in other words, non-musical theater to do. So I ended up, just taking parts in musicals, anything I could do to get on stage, anything I could do to get directed. I don't sing karaoke. I tell people I can't sing. If you give me 6 weeks and a rehearsal and a musical director that's patient, yeah, I can get there. But I'm not a natural singer. So when I went to college, I was super excited to be able to do real straight dramatic and comedic theater. And we dove in the deep end. We did Chekhov my freshman year. And I said, essentially, nope. And I did not find it fun. I did not find it enjoyable at all. And I always promised myself that if that were the case, I'd take a break. Well, lo and behold, that break ended up lasting about 15 years. And in the meantime, I went across campus to the radio station and found my people there and got into radio, ended up doing that professionally for 15 years. And when I landed my first and what turned out to be my career full-time job in radio, I landed in the production studio after my shift. And when it dawned on me, Kevin, I could put theater together with radio and be a voice actor? Are you kidding me? Yeah. Get the hell out of my way. So I really made a push in 1998, 1999, to really figure out this voice acting thing and to sort of break into it, right? And I remember buying a book by Sandy Thomas, who's still around to this day, called So You Want to Be a Voiceover Star. And Kevin, I ate it like food, man. I consumed it. And I really, I got the 5-minute blank cassette tapes from Broadcast Supply Warehouse and the label templates, and I would stay surreptitiously at night at the radio station because they had a Volkswagen-sized laser printer that I could use to make my professional labels and blah, blah, blah. And long story short, I really made a push for about 2 years, and I did not dent the wall of voiceover. Got a few jobs here and there. But what I learned was, in those days, if you weren't union if you weren't in New York or LA, maybe Chicago. You didn't have access to coaching. You didn't have access to real representation, right? I mean, Philly was 20 minutes up the road from me. And I even took a job at Mike Lemon Casting as an unpaid intern at age 30, just to try and learn about the business. And what I learned was, at least in Philly, all the on-camera talent got the voiceover work because they already had the relationships. So I found it a very tough nut to crack and defaulted back to what most radio people do, which is carry side clients, right? Hey, you did our radio spot. Would you do our cable spot? Well, sure. And I did that for a long time. And then maybe about 8 or 9 years ago, I started to notice friends from the business that were going full-time as voice actors. And I went, hold on a damn minute here, because they're not in New York, and they're not in LA, and they're not union. And what I learned was that the world had changed, right? We now have YouTube. We now have digital video. Every company, including the guy that just did my brake job, does YouTube videos for content marketing to bring people into his shop, right? So every company is now a media company, and that gave rise to, as we know now, the rise of the non-union voice actor. And when I figured out, hell, I've been selling for other people for years because I had gotten out of radio. First, I went onto the sales side of radio, and then I ended up selling for technology and media companies. And I thought, well, hell, if I can do that, I know I can sell myself. And that's when the gloves came off, and I put together a plan and went full time.
Don't go anywhere. The Making Waves VO podcast returns in a moment.
Well, hello there. I'm AJ McKay, voice actor, demo producer, and audio engineer. And you're listening to the Making Waves VO podcast with my good friends, love these guys to death, Kevin Kilcarney and Bobby Mayswell. What's that? Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell. Whatever.
Bobby, this is a hot time of the year, and it's always a great time to buy gear at Full Compass. And why is this so why is it really good right now?
Well, we're excited about this. We have a special code for Making Waves listeners that you can get 10% off of almost anything at fullcompass.com. I mean, who doesn't love a sale? I know I do.
I know, and we were so excited. We got the email this morning from Full Compass, and they said, hey guys, we have a new code, and that code is Making Waves, all one word, Making Waves. Waves without the E, though, of course. It's a great time because there's a lot of VO coming up, right?
Oh, yeah. We did an episode about this on Making Waves, about what's happening this fall and what's happening up until the end of the year. So everybody's kind of doing updates and bettering their equipment. So if you want to find some great products, and they pretty much have it all, and you can get 10% off with Making Waves, the code, when you check out, do it. Do it.
Think about it. You could buy, a $500 microphone and you save $50. I mean, and then with that $50, you could buy some new cables. On and on and on. But I will tell you, it is a limited time only on the new code, Making Waves. And there are a few exclusions, Bobby.
Yeah, it is for a limited time on purchases of qualifying non-sale items, not valid on parts. Cannot be combined with any other offer. Additional exclusions apply. $1,000 maximum discount and limit one redemption per customer. So get it all at once. Offer not valid on previous purchases. Non-transferable single-use promo code. Call 800-356-5844 for details. Void where prohibited.
That code, one more time, is Making Waves. MAKINGWAVS. Making Waves. No E.
10% off from Full Compass and fullcompass.com.
We know VO.
Now back to the podcast.
It's funny, when you were trying in, the late 90s, 98, 99, in that time frame, you were so close to the home studio model. You were just a few years early on that. You've had to reflect on that and go, man, I was just a little bit early, right?
Yeah, just a touch. And then it's funny because I actually started to put the pieces together even then. But I didn't have connection, right? Because in those days, it was ISDN or nothing, and ISDN was super expensive, right? And, I mean, factors, multiple factors of what Source Connect, for example, costs now. And so I thought, okay, when I get a job that justifies that, boom, right? And that never really came along. So it was the connection that I started. My first home studio, Kevin, still had a reel-to-reel machine in it.
Oh
it
my
had
gosh.
a DAT player. You remember DAT?
DAT, yeah.
And a CD burner, of course, which was, became essential. And, of course, cassette was still in the mix there as well.
That's funny. You talk about, the pre-printed labels. I ordered all those labels and stuff, and I was sending out reels and, reels for work. But when it came time to market myself, I started doing this full time in 2004, and it was cassettes, sending out cassettes, and then I'm burning a compact disc, and I'm gonna send that out. How fancy! And then of course we went all digital, and it's all MP3s and all that. So we've come up in very similar ways. I love that. Let me get to some questions from Bobby. Okay, Bobby can't be here because she's under the weather and her voice is terrible today.
I'm so sorry.
So
Bobby, we hope you feel better soon.
Yeah, I know. She doesn't feel so bad, but it's her voice that sounds really bad. She sent me a sample recording of her voice. But I'm going to ask some questions because Bobby is very much part of this podcast. And she says, Paul, and I quote, "The real reason I couldn't attend today is because Paul is a Ravens fan. We just can't be friends. The AFC North is a force to be reckoned with this season, though. See you in week 5 is what she says. Hooday, yelled in a very hoarse, manly voice, okay?" So that's Bobby. But let me get to Bobby's first question. And Bobby asks Paul, "I see that you have a significant past in theater and radio, 2 areas that can help both and hinder your VO career. What are the pluses and negatives for you having come from that background?"
Wow, that's a great question. It's got a couple layers, right? And Kevin,
Yeah.
I'm sure you know this too. So theater and radio, I guess first off the top, both teach you to, in air quotes, be big, right? In theater, you've got to hit the back row. You've got to project. Everything is exaggerated in theater because it's live, and the people in the cheap seats deserve just as good a show as the people in the front row. Radio can often be very big, right? Lots of energy on the air, lots of energy in the spots. And that's the first thing I learned about voice acting is it's a lot smaller. It's much more akin to film or TV acting than it is to theater and radio. Because that human ear and the subtlety and nuance that needs to come across, especially in commercials, the microphone is that human ear that's only 4 inches away, 6 inches away, and so you've got to bring everything down much smaller. And you do have to be an actor. And while the theater helps with that, it's a different style of acting because of that size appropriateness, if that makes any sense. And then one of the cons is because of that bigness and because of the length of time I did radio, which was like 15 years. My current coach, Tina Marasco, who I absolutely adore, she said, "Look, Paul, you trained yourself this way for 15 years. You got training this way for 15 years. You're not going to flip it off just by flicking a switch. And so you have to retrain and really consciously rehearse, practice, get good coaching. And slowly but surely, I'm breaking those habits, and I'm getting shortlisted on big national stuff, but I've yet to break through."
Yeah, and that's the thing is do you find that is the biggest challenge for you personally is getting the radio beat out of you some?
Yeah. Number one is learning to get back in touch with my acting roots, and Tina's immensely helpful with that because in addition to being a coach and a casting director, she is a Meisner-trained, classically trained actor. And so she brings that to the table, but she does so in such a way that she breaks it down, makes it super simple for those of us who are super simple. So to me, for my money, she's the best commercial coach in the country today. So number one is getting in touch with the acting. And then number two is she always, one of the notes that I get commonly from Tina is that you're too forward. In other words, your energy is a little bit too aggressive. I need you more laid back. I need you more chill, more confident, right? So learning for me, in my case, to do that and to right size the acting for the piece, because she'll tell you these are mini films that are being produced, especially for TV these days. So the production values are very high. The acting has to be at a very high level.
Yeah, they're all mini stories. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's so much more that goes on in that storytelling than we read when we first get the script, we read the script and then we read it again. And as we continue to read it over and over, we start to unpack things and go, oh, that's what the writer's intent is here. Oh, that's what we're uncovering here. Here's my true motivation. And then it's, executing those in the VO. And then it's just that simple, right, Paul?
And then don't overthink it all.
Yeah, exactly. You got to think a lot, but don't overthink it. I love that.
Hey, it's Amanda from Amanda Utter VO, and you're listening to the Making Waves VO podcast with my friends, Kevin and Bobby. Thanks for listening.
Let's dive into some of your side pursuits, your ancillary areas of voiceover that are maybe more of a hobby, but to me, from this perspective, there are things that you are doing, and again, this is my judgment, things that you are doing to help improve the VO community, to empower the VO community. And I'm talking about some of these things that have gone on in our industry. Like we've got trolls, we've got people in the industry that are harmful to the industry, and you, my friend, with an objective lens, are bringing some things to light that maybe not everybody wants to talk about, but we're grateful that you have brought them up. And I'm talking about specifically the thing that happened with a producer that allegedly hosed a bunch of people out of money. What was the impetus of that, of bringing that to the forefront, Paul? What was your thinking in doing all that?
Well, I thought the story needed to be told because so many times, and I don't want to make it sound like a super common occurrence, but I think we've got our fair share of folks in our business who are less than forthright. And I think and for largely a good reason, I think there's a hesitancy to come forward. The other fact of the business, Kevin, is that we're all very siloed, right? We're all in our tiny little padded cells talking to ourselves all day. And so we tend to believe that our problems or our obstacles or our frustrations are unique to us. And these folks that began to come forward in the case of that particular coach and demo producer, it was ones and twos. And this problem had been going on for years, and it's only come to light in the past maybe 6 or 8 months because people started talking within themselves, I had this experience. Does that ring a bell to you? And people starting putting 2 and 2 together. They got in touch with Nava. I heard about this, the first folks starting to come forward very early, and I wanted to be very careful about how I told this story. First, to protect the victims, first and foremost, because not everybody's comfortable with coming forward. I wanted to be able to tell the story credibly and with credible sources, but at the same time, as you say, to stay objective, because as an observer and not as someone who knew any of the victims, well, I came to know some of the victims, but I didn't know the coach, the producer. We had never, strangely enough, even interacted online. And so I wanted to keep a fresh perspective and an objective perspective and still tell the story according to the victims. And the thing to me that strikes me most is the courage that these folks, not just the folks that were able to talk to me in that particular piece on YouTube, but the folks that came forward to tell their own story, at least to each other and then to Nava. And then they were able to band together to get some legal representation. And to be able to sort of at least pursue some justice for the people that were victimized by this person. So that was my goal, was to protect the victims and tell the story.
Love that. And after all that came out, after your YouTube and all the stuff that you did around this effort, what kind of this is from Bobby, what kind of feedback did you get after that all aired and was out there for a little while?
Well, the first great benefit was there were people that saw that story and hadn't yet heard about the Vocal Victims Group. And so they were able to now join the group, document the losses and the stories that they had to tell. And so we were able to shine light for several more victims of this particular producer and coach. And so that was the first great thing that came out of it. The second great thing was that folks like Scott Parkin, folks like, and I think I have this right, I think even Kristen Paiva was able to these folks came out of the woodwork to try to restore some faith in the business, because whenever somebody does something nefarious, we all suffer, especially I'm not a demo producer, but certainly in this case, other demo producers suffered by association. Other coaches, myself included, suffered by association because it reduces the faith in the people in our business, and that's harmful. And so the Scott Parkins of the world put on free classes for these folks, right? I was able to donate some memberships in my VO Pro community to try and help folks out. So I think a lot of good came out of it. That certainly nobody would choose this to happen in our business, but it also shows the generosity of people that see that, look, these folks were victimized through no fault of their own. And we can't make it right, but we can at least try to help. And Scott was one of those people that came forward and did that.
That's really cool. I love hearing those stories, the glow or the halo afterwards, some positivity came about because of it. And you're a big reason. So kudos to you, man, for doing that and taking the charge and leading the charge for that cause. Let's talk more industry stuff. The NAVA survey came out recently. This is from Bobby. And she wants to know, did anything surprise you about the results of the NAVA survey? And do you think the rates will stay the course?
So nothing necessarily surprised me. And I took a little bit of care this year to go back and compare this year. I went back 2 years to, actually 3 years in the State of VO survey. And I specifically looked, Kev, at what people were making 3 years ago, what they're making now. 75% of us 3 years ago were making less than $40,000 a year. 50% of us were making less than $8,000 a year. Those numbers have shifted a little bit, right? 50% of us are now making less than $10,000 a year, and 75% of us are now making less than $50,000 a year. So it's shifted by about 25%. And while that's encouraging, it's certainly not where we need to be. We don't want an industry where fully half of us are making less than 5 figures, right? It's changed a little bit. It's shifted a little bit. People are marketing a little bit more because folks like myself and Tracy Lindley and Mark Scott and Tom Deere, we've been beating that drum. So I feel like people are taking their careers into their own hands a little bit more than they were. I just think we've got a long way to go. So while I wasn't surprised, I was a little bit pleased that we're moving, it feels, in the right direction.
Don't go anywhere. The Making Waves VO podcast returns in a moment.
This is the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell. I'm Chris McCloy, and they didn't pay me a dime to say this. Why am I doing this for free? Hang on a sec. I'll talk to my agent.
Full Compass is your one-stop destination for cutting-edge audio, video, and lighting solutions. With nearly 50 years of industry expertise, we offer a vast selection of high-quality equipment, from microphones, recording interfaces, and software, to audio accessories, monitors, headphones, and other pieces to help you find your ideal sound. Our trained product experts are here to help every step of the way with unmatched customer service. You'll also get free same-day shipping, flexible financing options, and a low-price guarantee. Visit us online at fullcompass.com or call 800-356-5844 today.
Making Waves returns. Love to hear that. So that's great feedback to hear. And let's talk about your day-to-day. I know you do some coaching stuff, but we're going to get to some of that stuff here in just a little bit. Oh, also, we're going to get to a nightmare session story from Paul coming up in just a little bit. And we've all talked about those sessions that maybe couldn't have gone worse, or perhaps it was a client that you had a very difficult relationship with. That can be a nightmare session story. But what is Paul's day-to-day? What are you working on a good part of your day when it's not coaching or doing YouTube stuff?
So the first thing that I do every day is my marketing, right? I make sure that that's the first thing that gets done every day. It's scheduled as the first thing in my day. Because look, we all know the day can get really freaking sideways by 10 a.m., right? Yeah. So I make sure that the marketing's the first thing I've got on my calendar every day so that I get that out of the way, because it is the single most important thing I do for my business, which is keep my funnel full. If I don't do that, then in time that funnel degrades, and guess what? My business degrades. So that's number one. And then number two is, yes, for the coaching side, I do produce quite a bit of content. And so to do that, that's scheduled into my day and into my week. But I also schedule blocks for auditions that come in. And since I've already got my marketing scheduled, that's already done too. No 2 days are ever really the same. Wednesdays are kind of crazy for me because Thursday is my publish day. So that's the day I publish my YouTube video, my blog, the newsletter, the Move, Touch, Inspire newsletter. So that's the big content production and release day for me. So Tuesdays and Wednesdays tend to be pretty heavy with content. And then, of course, when things like, pickups, live sessions, jobs come in, I've got blocks for that, but sometimes a client needs to be accommodated, and I move things around quite a bit.
I'm a fan of, or I always tell folks, I do some coaching myself, and people that I mentor, I always preach, it all adds up. So that's a phrase I use, it all adds up. And I'm talking about your performance, your sound quality, your business mindedness, your professionalism, all these different things. What about you in terms of that? It all adds up. How important, Paul, to you are the other factors besides the performance, everything that goes along with dealing with a client among those things I mentioned? How important are they to you?
So they're extremely important. At my, if you took a snapshot of my career right now, I've had a lot of sales and marketing training even before I got into VO full time. I've had a lot of account management training even before I got into VO full time. So those parts of my practice, if you will, are pretty screwed down pretty tight. Not that I can't improve them, not that I don't think about improving them strategically, but my main focus is to improve in two areas. Performance, always, right? I'm going to be coaching for the rest of my natural life. And marketing, right? Always trying to figure out how I can improve that, because if I don't improve my marketing, if I don't strive to be the best marketer I can be, then the performance doesn't happen, because again, that funnel degrades and then the whole system goes to pot, right? So those are my two main areas of focus. I feel like, at least for my current room, I've worked with people like Uncle Roy and Jordan Reynolds to get my sound nailed down really pretty tight. So once you get that nailed down, it takes very little day to day, right? Like I might change my gain a little bit here and there, but I'm not really screwing around my signal chain a whole lot. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, 100%. It's just like because I know you've been told this 1,000 times, but hey, Paul, how do I get into voiceover? My grandma told me when I was about 15 hitting puberty that I've got a good voice, and but it's not.
Well, the thing with voiceover is by nature today, being a voice actor means being a freelancer, and there's so much to learn becoming a freelancer, especially for folks that haven't done it before. Coming from what I call a cushy corporate job, right? Because you literally run your own business. One of the things that bowls people over as first-time freelancers is nobody's walking through that door, Kevin, to hand you a schedule and tell you how to structure your time every day. People really struggle with that, right? You are the boss, and you got what you asked for, right? But you've got to be able to structure that time.
I wish I could work for myself.
Exactly.
Now what?
And there are so many things to be done and so many competing priorities that you've got to have a system to be able to structure that time, because your time and your attention are your two most valuable assets as a voice actor and as a freelancer and an entrepreneur, period. How you spend your time and attention makes all the difference.
I love it. That's great advice. And as we're talking about our business models and things that got to be up to par and all these things adding up to a professional voiceover career, we see, Bobby and I both observed that you have a very fine website laid out. And Bobby in particular enjoyed the subtle humor, a little bit of sarcasm at times among the writings in your website. And she wanted to know, do you ever get any feedback from clients or potential buyers about your website specifically?
Occasionally on the website, I get more feedback on my email outreach. I just had a guy reach out. I got back late Sunday night from One Voice in Dallas, And Monday, a guy reached out and said, hey, as a freelancer and a marketer myself, he has a video production company, said, as a freelancer and a marketer myself, I got to tell you, your marketing is solid top to bottom. I had to open it because of your subject line, and I had to read it all the way through because of the humor and the tone and everything else. And that's the best compliment you could ever get, right? And it doesn't mean that it's a perfect email. There is no such thing. I'm constantly experimenting with my messaging, both in the email and on the website. But I want to try to be, a little bit different, still professional, maybe a bit offbeat. And then, I also came into this, Kevin, with quite a bit of a technical advantage because I had worked in sales for a bunch of high-end website developers. So I understood, having worked with great UI UX designers, right? What that brings to the page, to the site, and what have you. So I've been fortunate enough. I was nominated twice for a Sovas Award for Best Voiceover Website, having had a little bit of that background, really went a long way. So thanks, Bobby, for saying that. That's very kind.
Yeah. Good stuff. And getting back to the marketing a little bit, how much can good marketing make up for lack of talent in the voiceover world for somebody just getting into this?
You have to be baseline competent, right? You can't come into this with very little training, poor demos, a mediocre website, and think you're just going to market your way out of that. That's not the case. You have to be competitive, right? You have to be able to get the training so that when you're auditioning with 10 or 50 or 500 other voice actors, that you are turning in reasonably competent, professional, well-performed auditions. That's number one. If you're not there, you don't have anything to market. So product is first, Kevin. But that said, once you're baseline competent, once you have professional level demos, once you have a professional looking website that is well laid out and converts well, then you're ready to market. And when you ask what the difference is, the great marketers in this business, if you go to my website, there's a page talking about the VO Freedom Master Plan. We actually analyzed the data from NAVA, and there is on a scale of 0 to 1, there is a 0.66 correlation between the number of outreaches that a voice actor does and the amount of money they make. If you classify that, it's classified as a moderate to strong correlation. The more you market, the more you make. Yes, you have to be competent in your product, but that said, if that's the baseline, then those that market at a correlation of 0.66, 2 to 1, really, to those that don't make much more money.
Surf's Up. It's the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell. This is voice actor and studio owner Christy Bowen, and they appreciate you listening.
Man, you've got a lot to offer the voiceover industry. Paul, why don't you talk about your offerings and what you're doing with folks? I know you do some coaching, and I know you help people get going and these kinds of things. What are you offering besides voiceover services?
So our signature, thanks for asking, our signature program is called the VO Freedom Master Plan, and it essentially teaches voice actors to be able to learn to market their business so that they can self-generate many more opportunities, right? This business is all about, as J. Michael Collins says, at-bats, right? At-bats come in the form of auditions. They come in the form of people reaching out and handing you jobs. They come in the form of referrals. They come in the form of getting on rosters directly with clients. And the great thing about voiceover and marketing is that it's not like a baseball season where you're only going to get about 600 at-bats. You can create as many at-bats as you like based on your marketing. The more you market, the more at-bats you create. And so that's what we teach in the VO Freedom Master Plan. And the reason is I realized that when I went full-time, Kevin, I was able to do that in 9 months from the time I started executing my plan. But I also knew I had a ton of sales and marketing experience that most folks don't have. I had the website advantage that most folks don't have. And I also came to realize that my success was not common, right? It's not common to go full-time in 9 months. It's also not smart, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I jumped a little too early, but I made it work. And in 3 years, I was making more money in voiceover than I ever made in any job in my life. and I had some pretty good jobs. So I started like digging into this, like, why are people quitting the business? Like, because I knew I would see it happen, Kevin. I'd go, I know that person's a better actor than I am, right? So it didn't make sense to me. And what happened was, literally 3 years ago, I was reading through the State of VO survey, and I saw those stats. Again, 50% of us aren't making more than $8,000 a year at that time. 75% were making less than $40,000 a year at that time. And I thought, well, and then the third stat was, they asked voice actors, how often are you reaching out to market your services? And 75% again said less than 3 times a day. And my jaw dropped. Like, what business in the world can you expect to market to 2 people or less a day and be successful? Right? So I knew there was a causative effect there. And I thought, I know how to solve this problem, but I don't know necessarily how to teach other people to do it. And so I put my system into a curriculum form to see if what I had to offer was learnable, was digestible, was actionable by other people. And I got 25 voice actors to test the initial program, and we baked that feedback in, and I hired a consultant from who also was the online and distance learning program manager for the University of Maryland. And we literally brought the course up to a college-level course. And so we coupled that with an online community that helps you when you have issues, problems, obstacles, questions, because one guy can't service hundreds of students, right? That's just not practical. So we do support by community, and it's super helpful because when you have a problem, 6 people might jump in and go, hey, Kevin, I had the same thing happen to me. Here's what I did. And you might get 6 slightly different answers, but all these folks are using the same tools and processes you are. So it's incredibly contextual and incredibly helpful. And then the third element of the program is to get even deeper. We have weekly group coaching calls, which I run and moderate, but which, the same idea applies. 4 or 5 or 6 people might have a solution for you and be able to help you. And meanwhile, everybody else in that call and in the community is learning from that experience as well.
How could folks reach you if they are interested in that?
So you go to their website, not only details our VO Freedom Master Plan, but also our community, which is called VO Pro. And you can get to both of those at vopro.pro. Again, vopro.pro.
That's easy enough. All right. Without further ado, Paul, thank you so much for your time. But if you would, wrap us up with a nightmare session story, a story of, it could be a client interaction. It could be anything related to voiceover, something that maybe couldn't have gone a whole lot worse.
Nightmare Sessions!
So several years ago, this has to go back probably 6 or 7 years, I was, and this might surprise people, I got this client from a pay-to-play. I auditioned on a pay-to-play for a job, which was essentially an e-learning / meditation job. And I really wasn't super clear on what the work was actually like, but I did the audition, got shortlisted, didn't hear back for a while. Client reaches out through the platform and says, is there any way I can contact you off platform? Well, hell yes, there is. And so the client reached out and said, I really like your stuff. I'd love to partner with you on this. And what I would like to do is a live session so that you can get a feel for how I would like to direct you, and then you can sort of self-direct after that.
Sure.
Well, we did an hour. We booked an hour session, and we just had some more or less dummy copy that was being developed for this. It turns out it's for a mobile app. And the client and we were having a little trouble getting on the same page. I'll long story short this for you, Kevin. I started beating my head against a wall at about 40 minutes in because we weren't making a whole lot of progress, but I stayed, 2 things. I stayed patient and I stayed coachable. And I was really trying to give this guy what he wanted. But at the end of the hour, we were only a couple of steps down the road. To this client's credit, they said, you know what? We made a little bit of progress today. Let's book another session. And we did that. And the same thing happened. This turned into 5 live paid sessions. And the client was extremely patient with me. I was extremely patient with them. They ended up becoming my biggest client for about 5 years.
Wow.
And yet, sadly, that came to a crashing end when they decided last year to just stop paying me. And the problem with that was, against my better judgment, I had to let them accrue about five figures, well into five figures, in credit at no interest, because we had a great partnership. And I let that color my judgment, and it came back to bite me. So we're in... let's just say we're pursuing getting that money back. So,
man,
yeah.
I hate that for you.
I hate it for me,
that
and
is a
I
nightmare.
honestly I hate it for the client. They're in a much worse position than I am. I'm mostly sad that the relationship is over and the friendship is the friendship will stay. It's just business, but that the partnership is over.
I'm sure it's beyond this point for what I'm about to say, but I've had clients in the past that have stiffed me. And, it's very, when I first started doing this, Paul, it was very personal to me, and I let it be personal. So I let it get a little unprofessional. Now it's just numbers. It's black and white now.
It is.
But I have had to deploy this tactic. And the last time I did it was probably about 6 years ago. I have great clients. They all pay. But I had this one client that I was having to beg for my stupid little $500 for about, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 months, whatever it was. And it was a sizzle piece for a major network. Now, the major network hired this individual producer, and they gave them autonomy to hire the talent and do all the sound design and do everything they had to do, right? So I got hired by this individual producer, and I'm chasing this $500, chasing. And I tried this tactic 2 other times in my career, and it worked both times. But this producer was not even writing me back, not even acknowledge the emails, nothing. And I went on Facebook to check him out to make sure there was no life-altering things that happened. And, I'm seeing posts and everyday life is still going on. Okay, so I have, the ability to reach out to them. So I said, hey, Dan, man, I've really been trying to get this payment from you. I want to get this settled. Perhaps I was not supposed to invoice you. Maybe I was supposed to invoice beep, beep, beep. 3 letters of a huge, broadcast network. They got back within in 10 minutes. No. Please do not reach out to them. I will get you paid within a day. And they did. So anytime you have a client above them or somebody else above them, and that's not something you can pull out every single time. But if you feel like you've lost the money, hey, it's one final tactic that may work, because you're never going to work with that client again anyway.
And legally, until you're paid, you retain the copyright on that work. So you can rescind, you can send a cease and desist if you want to go that route, directly to, in your case, it would be directly to the network. And so to reach out to the middleman, the producer, and say, hey, I don't want to have to do this. I think we can get this resolved. That will usually get you some results as well.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. Great chatting with you. Real quick before we wrap up, what's your favorite sport to watch?
Oh, man. Coming up, I was a baseball guy, and I still am. But there was a significant period, Kevin, where my dearly beloved Baltimore Orioles were god-awful. And at the same time, we got a brand new football team in the Baltimore Ravens, and football has crept ahead of baseball for me. I really get amped up for football season. But the Orioles are good now again, and I don't know what to do with myself. Both the Orioles and Ravens are good at the same time, and it's really screwing up my head.
Yeah, you're living high on the hog right now, and don't be jealous, but I'm going to go see your Baltimore Orioles coming up in a couple of weeks in Boston. I'm going to be in Boston. I'm going to go catch a game while they're in town there.
Very nice. Well, of course,
Yeah.
I'll be pulling for anybody that beats the Red Sox and the Yankees is okay in my book. So,
Paul Schmidt, thank you so much for your time, man. It's been a blast, and hope to do this again with you sometime.
Kevin, it was super kind of you and Bobby to have me on. I hope she's sounding better, since I understand she feels just fine. But Bobby, sound better soon. And I'm super grateful, dude. I'd love to have you guys on coming up on my podcast as well. So hopefully we can get that together.
Yeah, we'd love it. We'd be honored, man. Let us know. Well, I normally use this time to chat with Bobby a little bit more and talk about our guests that we just had on and what a great job they did. But I'll just talk to myself right now because it's just me. I'm sure Bobby would say, Kevin, Paul was so nice. He's so knowledgeable. He's so friendly, and he's really good for the industry with his investigative videos that he puts on YouTube. Why, Bobby, you're right. He is a great guy. He's good for the industry. Ha ha ha. Chuckle, chuckle, chuckle. Paul Schmidt, thanks so much for your time, man. You did great today, and we were glad to have you on the Making Waves VO podcast. And we've got another great episode coming up next week. The Making Waves VO podcast is presented by Full Compass, fullcompass.com. We know VO.
The Making Waves VO podcast is produced by K2 Media Productions with hosts Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell. Sound design and editing by Jason Traver. Production assistance by Lacey Deline. Publicity and social media by Shannon Scott and Silas Phillips. Be sure to subscribe to the Making Waves VO podcast on your favorite platform. For all episodes, merchandise, gear, and more, visit makingwavesvo.com. Until next time, I'm AJ McKay. Keep making waves.